2030.
Saudi Arabia, the point of investment
2030,
fund,
it's a
there's a
big
lot of
year.
excitement
This
around
transformational
NEOM
change.
specifically.
Every aspect of the kingdom, economic, social, cultural, religious.
The 2030.
This is the 2030.
Yalla, yalla, yalla.
This is the 2030. We're not live, but we're in person in a rare in-person episode for this show. I'm in London now, flying from Saudi Arabia to London and then back to the United States. So we decided, hey, let's do an in-person podcast episode. Dr. Hanaa, how are you? Nice to see you. Thanks for having me here.
I'm well. Welcome to London.
Thank you. Pretty good weather. Didn't bring any. I brought a vest, not a real coat. But you described it as being very cold. So I'm glad it's kind of nice.
I think you brought the sunshine with you from Riyadh.
I think so. Thanks for saying that. I'd like to think that. We are going to stick with our normal formats for this in-person show, but we thought it'd be fun to do it in person. We were going to have a special recurring guest, Faisal Durrani, with us, but he just left London for Riyadh. Wouldn't you know it? So he's not going to be joining us this episode, but maybe in the next one or two episodes, he will be giving us an update on the real estate sector. If you haven't listened to it yet and you're listening to this episode somehow, we had a really great first introductory episode, I should say, discussing sort of what we're doing with this podcast. And then also our next episode 2, is our first real episode, and it's our standard format. So, and then all of a sudden we throw in this curveball, and now we're live, or live in person for us. So
Yeah.
Anyway, but we do have sort of a set regular thing for the show, and it's nice to be doing this with you in person because we're going to get some really good conversations out of this. And I think we've got some great stuff to cover this week. We're going to be discussing a new report on Vision 2030 in just a few moments, and we will also be discussing the news as well. So, yeah, how's everything going?
Yeah, great. Everything is warming up here in London, thawing out a little bit. We got a bit of an Arctic blast last week, so it was very cold. It was like winter returned. It's nice that it's warmer. And it's also just, it's great to be continuing thinking about this podcast and what kind of content to bring on, and some of the different developments that are happening in Saudi, which keep coming. So there's never a lack of new content and things to talk about.
I want you to know, Hanaa, that when I arrived and got to customs, the guy that was looking at my passport said to me, he said, "Welcome to London summer." And I guess it's because it's above 10 degrees.
Yeah.
Which, which is great. It was super warm in Riyadh, but not yet too warm where it's like you can't go outside really safely. But it was getting into the 90s in terms of Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius. You're the Fahrenheit Celsius.
It's, you're getting into your 30s. So
okay. So
it's getting warm.
Yeah, it's getting warm.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to the people at Saudi German Hospital who have really made my recent stay in Riyadh quite nice this week. Hanaa knows the story very well, but had an issue with my hand and made 3 visits to that hospital and don't think I saw a German in the hospital, but the hospital itself was very nice, took great care of me. And one of the nurses asked what I do. I said that I have a podcast. And so now, I don't know, maybe she'll randomly hear this or see this. I have no idea, but that explains the thing on my hand. So anyway, if you're looking at that, which you wouldn't see on a normal episode, but that's what's happening here. So yeah, but shout out to them. Great people. Made a stop there on the way to the airport. So yeah, and yeah.
As we say in Arabic, salamat. Salamat, yeah.
Which means
wishing you well. Hopefully that you
in a health standpoint.
In a health way, yes,
okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm gonna need a little bit.
Some people actually in other dialects, salamat can mean hello.
Okay.
Like in Palestinian, Syrian, they'll say salamat as a hello, but in Gulf Arabic, it's always
like get well
wishing
soon.
you well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's get to the deep dive.
Let's do the deep dive. So my deep dive this week is on the annual report of Vision 2030 for 2023, which was released on the 25th of April, I think 24th or 25th. But it has made really big headlines across Saudi social media, across obviously, traditional media and press. It's the vision annual report versus like the National Transformation Program annual report, which is more specific. And so this is everything. It's all of the vision realization programs in one place.
Do they do
all
this
of the
every
details.
year, or is it like a?
So I did a very quick search to see if I could find an older one. And I think there have been versions of it. But what I think is interesting about this one is we're 8 years in, and we're now in phase 3 of Vision 2030. And it kind of takes you through this journey now. In its 8th year, here we are. This is what we've achieved. And it really is, it's really impressive. Like it's over 180 pages of data and stats, and it covers everything. Like the vision is really comprehensive.
Yeah.
And this report is so inspiring because actually 87% of the key initiatives were achieved or are on track to be achieved.
87%?
It's a lot.
That's pretty good. You definitely would not have said that at the beginning of the vision. You would have been like, get half of this. And you're good.
They were really ambitious targets. And yes, there's been some recalibration, and there have been some different programs that have, maybe some of the programs are not as important anymore. Some of them have merged together. But I think that what's really exciting about this annual report is that every single one of these initiatives is on track and gaining momentum, and something positive is there to report across all sectors, all segments of society, all of these different initiatives. And so I just wanted to kind of bring out some of those stats and some of the things that were mentioned. I mean, my social media feed is full of infographics that people have made as it normally is when something big like this drops, right? One of the key things that's being consistently reported is that 50% now of GDP is represented by non-oil revenue. So this is obviously a really big deal. It is the vision, right? It's diversification, and now, and now we're getting to a really good place there. Also, unemployment has gone down for Saudis to 7.7%. Overall unemployment 4.4%. So this is incredible. It's on track. Living standards have improved. Life expectancy has improved. It's now 78 years. Home ownership rates have improved for Saudis. I think that, there's reports about global indices and where Saudi stands in comparison to other countries in terms of competitiveness, cybersecurity, overall performance against other G20 countries. So it's the third G20 country in overall performance, and the third globally in capital markets. Like, I'm not entirely sure what that means. Maybe somebody else can interpret that, but it sounds like it's doing really well, right? And then it just goes into a lot of the other initiatives. So it talks about how the Citizens Account program has provided over 185 billion riyals to qualifying families since its inception. And there were rumors that this was going to stop, but actually now we know it's going to continue at least through 2024. You have, reports about PIF as well. So massive investments, 2.81 trillion riyals. It owns 93 companies. It's created over 644,000 jobs. So, it's really, that's two ends of the spectrum, and then everything in between. You also are thinking about the growth that's happening through these investments, through the investments of PIF and the growth that's happening there. But basically, small and medium enterprises have grown by 108%. In terms of venture capital, it's ranked number 1 in MENA. You might have something to say about this, but funding has grown by 33% according to the annual report in 2023.
Excellent.
FDI, it's increased to 2.4% of GDP, which is really interesting. So I know that there's a lot of efforts to really diversify the economy, and that's in this report as well, thinking to attract FDI, That's mentioned in the report, where you really are looking at how Riyadh is trying to attract companies to establish their headquarters there. So you have over 200 companies now that have relocated and established their regional headquarters. And with 8,500 foreign investor licenses issued to work within the kingdom. So you do have more FDI coming in, and you have more companies that are contributing to the overall GDP, which is really interesting as well. Again, that's part of the vision, right? It's to open up You have some other really interesting things, like apparently Jeddah's port is now the largest Middle Eastern hub for logistics, with 1.3 billion riyals invested in renewable energy initiatives there as well. So I think that's another thing that we sometimes forget is it's a diversification project away from oil, which also includes renewables and it includes green energy, and it includes kind of raising the awareness of sustainability. And we've talked about AI on the show. So apparently, and this is really interesting, Saudi Arabia is ranked number 1 globally in AI strategy governance and number 2 in AI awareness in terms of what like the population knows about AI. I think that's a Stanford University index on AI awareness.
Interesting.
So it is interesting. So
they're aware that
apparently
AI is a thing. And
it's not just that AI is a thing so much as what it means, how you can leverage it, what it's going to mean for the future.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty interesting.
That is interesting.
And just, more continued growth on the nonprofit sector and its contribution to GDP as well. Obviously, this is something that Saudi talks about quite a bit, women's participation. We've exceeded all the targets that were set. So there was, a target of, I think, 22.8% or something along those lines. That's where we started. There was a target of 30% and it's 34%, something like that. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's exceeded the target way ahead of time, which is great. You also have people graduating from vocational education and training as well as higher education and getting jobs within 6 months faster than they have in the past. So in the past, I think when the vision started in 2016, it was something like 13% of graduates would get a job within 6 months, and now it's 39%. So it's 40% for both, 41, both people graduating with vocational certifications as well as higher education degrees. So I just think it's really interesting. The vision's delivered very tangible results. It's exceeded some of the 2030 targets already ahead of schedule. It aims for a lasting positive impact, and it's driving future kind of development by creating this momentum, by reaching these targets, by really reporting on them, and by creating these beautiful reports where people can engage with the content and really think about what that means for them. So in the report, you'll see certain people highlighted for initiatives that they've established and kind of pioneered. And that's really inspirational to other Saudis to kind of do that. And the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, was quoted as saying, the one asset that we have that is above all assets is Saudis.
People.
So yeah, it was a good report. It was really fun to read.
So it was like the roughly 30 million Saudis brought home a report card, and it was
they're doing well.
A lot of pretty well. Yeah, they're very excited to show off.
Exactly.
And that's very exciting. Did the report highlight what is left to be done? Because there's a lot to be proud of, and it sounds like that is what was highlighted. But
Definitely.
Did it highlight sort of, because the vision itself was ambitious and sort of laid out, hey, like this is what we're going to do, and I know this seems crazy, but this is very big, and we set big goals, and we're going to see what happens. Now this is the report card. Did it say what was left to be done?
On some level it did. So it shows you when you're on target and when you're not quite there. It's talking about when, real progress is made and where things haven't really grown at the pace that you want. So there are a lot of kind of timelines where you can kind of see whether or not we're getting toward the end of it or not. And not all of those levers have made it to the end, and we still have a few more years, but 8 years in, it is showing kind of where we are. And it's a really good indicator of progress, I think.
Yeah, I ask because, if you ever brought home a bad report card, the best bad report card is no report card. It gets lost on the way home. So you wouldn't be talking about how you've been doing.
True.
And so in a report like this, 180 pages, clear that there's a lot to be excited about and proud of. And we see that, right? When we go to Riyadh and we go to other parts of Saudi Arabia, the Eastern Province, Jeddah, north, south, everything is different. So this is just reflective of the reality and sort of measures it against the benchmarks that we see. I
think the thing that gets lost outside of Saudi Arabia is how excited everybody is about these numbers. Yes. People read this and they think, "Oh my God, we're incredible! Look what we've achieved." And it's not because somebody else is doing it. It's because people are working really hard and they know somebody that's working in one of these vision realization programs. They know somebody that's working in, a small and medium enterprise that has funding from the government or from, one of the initiatives or from HRDF and the expanded amount of money that's on offer for small companies and for training and for development. Everybody's getting something from this. There are challenges, and I love that officials admit that those challenges are there because obviously it's a lot of change all at once, and I don't think everybody's ready to embrace it. But I think now 8 years in, some of those growing pains are easing up a little bit, and people are a bit more excited about the potential of the future.
What's interesting, the name of this podcast is the 2030s. So that's the end date of this vision. The vision doesn't really actually have an end date. It doesn't have a deadline. It's just it's a set of goals, KPIs, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
If you meet them ahead of time, great, which they did. And the report highlights that. In some areas, we knew that already. In tourism, for example, blew it away.
Yeah.
The reason why I asked the previous question is because I'm interested in the fact that once you get to 2030 and once you hit your goals, then you go from there and say, okay, what's next? 2050, 2060, where do we want to go from here?
Yeah.
Success is never enough for a country. You need to just keep having it. I just think it's very cool because you mentioned that Saudis were such a key element of this, and the fact is that if they didn't buy into the vision, then this wouldn't happen. They all bought in.
Yeah.
I mean, they all were part of it. They all said, this is a good direction for us to go in. It's going to take some blind faith. So we're going to do it and see what happens. So you get a report card like this, like a kid coming home from school saying, Mommy, I crushed it at school. I'm doing really well.
Yeah.
Aren't you proud of me?
Yeah.
And they all feel that way.
No, absolutely. I do think that that's right. And, another thing that's mentioned in this is the number of jobs that have been created and the number of new sectors that have grown, and culture and tourism are a big part of that. And so that's where you also get people excited about showing their own history, their background, their stories as part of the vision through these new sectors and this new initiative. And I think that's exciting as well. So, yeah.
And I think what's interesting is where we are from a macroeconomic standpoint for Saudi Arabia. You have revised upward GDP forecasts for Saudi for 2025 because of oil, and forecasts that oil prices will go up. So diversification is not finished. It's still very much reliant on oil. But while that is happening, as long as you see the reinvestment and it's going into non-oil economy that continues to grow, you hit these benchmarks of the vision. It seems to be a plan that's working out. One they've always really wanted to do with their 5-year economic plans that preceded the vision, but now it's happening. And it's cool. Like, you can see it. It's I just came from there. Like, it's different every time you go. Okay, so let's get to news.
Let's get to the news.
Let's do it. Starting with sports, Aramco announces a partnership with FIFA. That's cool. On April 25th, Aramco announced its 4-year global partnership with football's governing body, giving them sponsorship rights for multiple events, including the FIFA World Cup 2026 and FIFA Women's World Cup 2027.
Yeah, on LinkedIn, Rania Biltaji, the global head of Aramco partnership and sponsorship, commented, "This marks a new chapter for us as we expand our sponsorship portfolio into the realm of football, a sport that transcends borders and unites people worldwide." She goes on to note that she is, quote, "proud to be part of such a globally impactful sport," quote, and she's looking forward to the opportunities that this collaboration is going to bring.
This is just like another sport feather in the Saudi cap of many feathers, this feather cap, a headdress, you might say. The sports is a key part of Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030, in part because it really touches other sectors. It affects tourism. It affects public image of Saudi Arabia. People say that it is sports washing. That makes absolutely no sense to me. But it is sort of like a, hey, if people are playing sports here and they feel comfortable traveling here and you have all of these events here, maybe your image of Saudi Arabia is a little bit outdated. So I feel like this is just the latest thing. We've had a lot with tennis. We've had a lot with golf, certainly with soccer, investments both in the Saudi Pro League, the Roshan Pro League, And external investments, of course, is it Newcastle United for my the 2030's resident EPL expert, Dr. Hanaa. That is Saudi owned, right?
Yes, Newcastle. They have a controlling stake in Newcastle.
Okay, cool. Well,
Yeah.
just Chelsea is for Lucian, so that's the only thing that matters. And
No,
you
that's
are
fine.
What's your team again?
We're Arsenal fans, but Newcastle comes in a close second.
Okay, cool. And where does Chelsea rank on that list?
So we have Chelsea fans in our family. There's some rivalries that happen. So we really
Okay.
need to stick to our Arsenal. Who? Sorry, did I mention they were number 1 on the Premier League at the moment?
You didn't mention
Okay,
that, but
yeah.
that's a good
Just
time
in
to kind of
case
throw that in there.
anybody
Yeah.
was wondering. I mean, let's hope we stay there. We've been doing really well. We have a really big goal difference at the moment, so inshallah.
Inshallah. Okay, and can you tell me? Sorry, I know we're going to get off track here on the Saudi thing already, but where is Newcastle now? Where is Arsenal now? And how, like, is Newcastle, have they done better or worse since the PIF invested? Like, what's up?
Yeah, no, Newcastle have done incredibly well since Saudi invested and basically has a controlling stake. Newcastle were on the down and outs basically, and when the PIF stepped in, I mean, the Newcastle fans were ecstatic. I don't know if anybody, missed it, but there was the first game, you had people wearing all sorts of fun headdresses, but it was all out of joy, respect, and celebration for a new chapter in the team's kind of basically, in the team's history. And I think that it's done really well so far. So I think people are very excited about the next few years and how it continues to progress. The players change, things change and move around quite a bit, but the fans are embracing the PIF investment with open arms.
As they should. In any sport without a salary cap, of course, you would say, hey, we've got Saudi owners now. This has to be good news.
This has to work out for us.
But that's very cool. The other sporting sectors that Saudi Arabia is investing in, just to name a few, Pro Fighter League, WWE, which is not really a sport in my opinion, but people love it. Horse racing, of course, you have Formula One, Formula E. Dakar Rally has been in Saudi Arabia for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, we mentioned tennis earlier. What else is missing? I know there's basketball maybe coming to Saudi Arabia, or
rugby.
at least some sort of...
Rugby is now coming up, and then Saudi recently hosted I think it was the junior league fencing finals.
Yes, I saw that. And your children are into fencing, right?
Yeah. My younger son fences. He's actually on his way to the British Youth Championship next weekend.
Mabruk.
So yes, Allah yabarak feek. Thank you. He's very excited. He's doing well. So that was exciting. It was, I think, young fencing cadets, something like that. I don't know. There are a few global competitions for fencing, but Saudi hosted them.
Also, things like snooker. It's like really kind of everything. It's they're like,
esports.
Hey, esports. It's not a sport, but
Were we going to talk about camel racing?
Camel racing.
Yeah, because that's the thing at the moment.
And also horse racing, right?
Yeah, so actually my cousin's horse came in third place in Al-Ula camel horse races I think it was last November. So horse racing is a big thing, and she's been really excited about the performance her horse has accomplished, and I get to kind of follow what's happening in that space through her, which is very cool.
That's awesome. We did mention football. I'm going to come back to it because we also obviously have the World Cup. Then you also have the Neom Beach Games and all of those things going on up at Neom, which is kind of insane. You have a new Saudi Sailing Federation, which rowing is now back. Yeah. So they're kind of like... It's every sport. And I think it's also part of their healthy lifestyle goals, not just for...
100%. It's part of the quality of life program, the vision program. And I think, that's to say a little bit about, how you said you didn't really understand what sports washing meant. When you have everybody engaging in kind of healthy activity, it's not sports washing so much as it's encouraging lowering rates of obesity and diabetes and ensuring that people have really good cardiovascular health and longevity. And we just reported in the Vision 2030-2023 annual report that life expectancy is going up. These are all good things. You want Saudis to be exercising more. and to engage in all these different types of sports and to find the one that's, that's suitable for them. So I think that you just need to think about it at population level, individual level. People are loving these sports and they're really engaging in them. So there's opportunities to be athletes in sports people had never heard of, like, for instance, rugby and fencing. These were not things that people necessarily did on a large scale within the kingdom.
Yeah, and like how arrogant of the West to be like, what you're doing in sporting is trying to convince us that we should change our opinion about you. And it's like, well, that's really quite a stretch. But you do also have the Asian Games. I'm going to see if we can get every single sporting thing in here. The Asian Games 2029 in Neom, right? We also have, and we talked about this in a previous episode, hiking clubs and walking clubs and sort of outdoor activity groups that are forming all over Saudi Arabia. Marathons developing, especially in the winter in
the
Riyadh.
Riyadh marathon.
Yes, indeed,
recently.
which I wanted to do and then slept through.
Oh no!
But yeah, no, I know.
Did you train for that?
Absolutely not.
Okay, I don't know that it would have been a good idea to just jump straight into a marathon.
Please, I can handle that. Okay. Anyway, moving on.
So camel racing. That's an interesting one. So Saudi Arabia's Al Ula Camel Cups prizes are worth over $21.3 million, apparently. Held at the Al Ula Camel Racing Field, the competition involves 6 rounds of camel races for men and women. Under the leadership of Prince Fahd bin Jului bin Abdulaziz bin Msaad, the Saudi Camel Racing Federation is making these important efforts to protect the rich cultural heritage and make sure that the sport meets international standards that are in line with the Saudi Vision 2030.
Yeah, this event is in its second year. I know that prize camels are like a huge business in Saudi Arabia in a way that sort of prize horses are in the U.S. and especially around the horse races that are occurring now, Kentucky Derby, all of those. Part of it, though, is beauty. And when I saw the Women's Aramco event in Saudi Arabia in February, which was an amazing event, another sport, we probably mentioned golf. I don't know if we
mention
did.
golf.
We okay, good, because we'd have to. But they brought the camels like from the beauty pageant in to the actual like golf tournament, and then when the winner won, they had the camels like walk up the 18th fairway and then get in the photo shoot. It was totally wild. I got some great art. Actually, we're gonna probably roll it while we're doing this. I'll bring it in. Anyway, this is really cool. Yeah, I mean, this is very Saudi as well.
Definitely very Saudi. Yeah, Mazain al-Ibil, that's where you bring your beautiful camels and put them on display and you get like huge sums of money, rewards for your beautiful camel.
And they're like shaving into the side of the camel and like making designs on the fur, right?
So I'm not an expert on this.
We need a camel expert.
We
then on the
definitely
show,
need a camel expert. I just know it's a thing and that beautiful camels are definitely a thing. And it's there's so much pride in grooming your camel and breeding camels and all of that. And what this event is doing, so this is a camel race. What I thought was really interesting is like about a month ago, they had this boot camp for women, these women camel jockeys, basically, that were going to be riding the camels. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. And they had this boot camp preparing them for these Al Ula, for multiple camel races, including the Al Ula Cup. And so there was a really funny TikTok video that somebody sent me, a compilation of TikTok videos that somebody sent me yesterday about kind of how they fared in this race. Apparently not very well. So there were a lot of women falling off of the camels, but that was what was in the TikTok video.
Be sure to send that TikTok video to me, please.
They're falling off. And there were... obviously people were following the race in their cars and like, shouting and commenting on the riders, supporting them, cheering them on, but also being horrified as they fell off and were loaded into ambulances. However, I don't know if you've ever gone on a little camel ride, but getting on the camel in and of itself is terrifying for me. You get on and it like, you feel like you're going to fall off because the camel, as it stands up, goes forward and backward and you feel like really unstable. So I think it's a really difficult thing, and that's why you needed a boot camp and you need a lot of training in order to do this. But what's great about this event this year is not only that they're including women and that they're trying to expand this and really get more people trained up to do it because it's such a big part of Saudi history and Saudi culture. This is the year of the camel in Saudi Arabia.
It is.
And so the Saudi Ministry of Culture had a pavilion alongside the Al Ula Camel Cup this year, and they were reenacting some traditional forms of communicating between the herders and the camels. So it was kind of interesting to think about that. And that's kind of evolved into this poetic kind of recitation of songs, poems, different types of calls to the camels. So it was, I guess, pretty special.
That's really cool. Two observations as an American thinking about camels, talking about camels. And, one is that when you see camels in real life, like as an American, you're aware of camels in popular culture and on things like Aladdin, which you talked about in the previous show. You know camels exist, but there are no camels in America. So
there's camels at the zoo, but like two-hump camels, which you'd find like in Asia and not in Saudi.
But usually the camels, with all due respect to the camels, are sitting down or sleeping when you go to the zoo. At least that was my experience. But in Saudi Arabia, when you see camels and when you see these prize camels, it's striking how big they are.
Yeah.
They're huge. Like I'm 6'1". They are like way taller than me. I mean, massive creatures and beautiful and lovely.
The ships of the desert.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. The other thing that I want to note, I'll make this quick. I'm so sorry, but my favorite thing to do when I'm in Saudi and I have jet lag is to watch Saudi TV, especially the sports channels at like 3 or 4 a.m. because that's usually on in any country when the content isn't as great. And recently, when I was in Saudi Arabia, I was watching a sports channel and it was a Saudi camel race. But the format was really interesting. It was 4 gentlemen and they had this huge studio and they were all in different corners of the studio. So I don't know how they heard each other talk, but they had different cameras going on them. And then they had a huge TV in the middle and there was a huge camel race. But in not the US, but globally, when horses race, they go in a circle. This camel race was like one straight line. So it was kind of like like they were like had the cars following them alongside the road. So they're not going around. It's just like a distance race, right?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so the camels that produce the most prize or money, they're the fastest or they go the longest, or how does it work?
I think that there's a finish line.
Okay.
So you want to get to the finish line as fast as you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the stereotype is that camels are very slow.
Oh, no, they're not slow at all.
Okay.
They're very fast.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, that's us breaking stereotypes here. Camels are fast. Moving on with the news. Great talk on camels. Maybe we go a little deeper on the deep dive. We have to move on into some business news. The World Economic Forum holds a special meeting on global collaboration, growth, and energy for development in Riyadh. I know, Hanaa, you were going to be there for it and are not because, in part, we're doing a podcast here in London. Heads of state and senior executives from the public and private sectors are expected to be among the participants who will discuss a range of global economic issues and developments under the theme Global Collaboration, Growth, and Energy for Development.
Yeah, and I mean, this was announced back in January at Davos, and Ministry of Economy and Planning Minister Faisal Ibrahim was quoted saying, the World Economic Forum has recognized that the kingdom is becoming a stronger, more impactful leader on the global stage, and we found it is an opportune time to bring this global Tier 1 event to the kingdom and start this new chapter together, unquote. So I think it's a very exciting thing. It might be one of the first World Economic Forum events of its kind to happen outside of Davos.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and the airport in Riyadh is certainly ready for it. There is sort of branding for it everywhere. I mean, they're very excited to welcome these world leaders for it. We also just saw recently that the IMF just opened up an office in Riyadh, which is really cool. Completely different organization, obviously, but it kind of shows the sort of global economic system really starting to fully embrace Saudi Arabia as a significant player, I think.
Yeah. And actually, in next deep dive, I'm hoping to kind of give you a little bit of a background on some statements that were made by El Jasser Abu Faisal on kind of the history of the Saudi economic plans, and he was Minister of Economy and Planning and Minister of Finance for some time. So it'll be interesting to kind of see like his take on how important the Saudi economy is for the global economy.
Totally. Super smart dude.
Yeah. So again, considering kind of this global interaction, global thinking about how
the world community, all of us together holding hands around the world.
Thinking about global collaboration, which is a big part of the vision. Saudi Arabia is set to host the Saudi UK Expo Great Futures in Riyadh in May. That was announced just a couple of days ago. Riyadh is gearing up to host the eagerly anticipated Great Futures Trade Exhibit, May 14th and 15th, jointly organized by the governments of Saudi Arabia and the United Kingdom. The British delegation will be led by British Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden, with over 300 business representatives on a mission to showcase what Britain has to offer.
Oliver Dowden, very British name. Great Futures is a flagship event to launch a 12-month campaign to highlight UK expertise and capability in sectors that support Vision 2030. Attracted a lot of big name sponsors and partners: HSBC, British Airways, TAG, Bechtel, and many others. This is pretty cool. Like, I like this. Yeah, and we're keeping up the UK theme as well.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Well, I mean, living here, honestly, I hear a lot of negative comments about Saudi Arabia. The British media is not very gentle or kind. And I think that it can be really harsh. And it's, for me, really important that people come and visit Saudi, and especially business people, politicians, and just the average tourist, because there is so much that has changed. Even today, I was speaking to a friend who was like, but I thought women couldn't work in Saudi. And I was like, but you've known me and we've talked about this, but you still forget that women have been working for a very long time in Saudi Arabia, and now so many more women are working. But it's really outdated, and I think it would be great to have this delegation come and really come back with their stories. I was just reading an article in Bloomberg where this woman that worked for Bloomberg went to, I think, a retreat in Al Ula, and they stayed in the Habitats Resort. And so she was talking about how she was really skeptical about going, didn't want to be there, and loved it and can't wait to go back now.
If you think about it, anyone that visits Saudi Arabia does not have the same stereotypes as before. That's why we're doing this podcast. You literally just highlighted the reason why. Is because you still get these questions, you still get these impressions of Saudi Arabia that are completely. It's like the questions are shocking. You're like, what? What are you talking about? But everyone that visits there physically sees it with their own eyes and says, okay, now I see what's happening here. Yeah. Those that get to see Al Ula especially say, well, this place is absolutely, terrific. No, that's I mean, yeah. And we talked about this also in an earlier episode. Anyone that visits Saudi Arabia in Riyadh specifically should see Diriyah, because it's such a cool sort of look into the past. You can go to Saudi Arabia and go to Riyadh and stay in the Four Seasons and be downtown, and that's going to be a very different experience than you might get. Anyway, so British media, U.S. media, quite harsh on Saudi Arabia, quite unfair to Saudi Arabia. I mean, there are many things to criticize Saudi Arabia about, but also let's not have opinions about it that are completely out of control. Let's move on to the PIF, small little fund. The PIF signed a 51% stake in Saudi telecom STC firm Tower Companies Limited, which I believe is a tower company for like cell towers, right? Yeah, okay. Tawal, which I believe is the name of the company, is the largest telecom infrastructure company in Saudi Arabia and one of the largest in the region, with an enterprise value of $5.85 billion per the agreement. Subsequently, PIF and STC Group will consolidate Tawal and Golden Lattice Investment Company, GLIC, in which PIF holds a majority shareholding, into a new merged entity, forming the largest regional company in the telecom infrastructure sector. Yeah.
Right. So the head of the MENA Direct Investments at PIF, Rad Ismail, was quoted saying, "Today's announcement is a significant milestone for the telecoms industry in Saudi Arabia and the wider region by bringing together the assets of GLIC and Tawal. We will establish a consolidated platform on which the telecommunications sector can flourish and give people a better experience to best connect communities and businesses."
I know my PIF boys are going to be like, don't say GLIC, say GLIC, but it's GLIC until anybody corrects us. Just a comment that if you are, we've been talking about visiting Saudi Arabia a lot, but if you are visiting Saudi Arabia, it's amazing. If you have a US cell phone, it just works, right? But the coverage in Saudi Arabia, get a Saudi SIM from STC and it costs almost nothing. And then it's like you have 5G everywhere you go. Yeah. So anyway, they have incredible coverage there. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. But yeah, this is kind of in line with PIF's strategy in the Vision 2030. They kind of want to, like this helps the economy grow. by having them as a partner with STC, that type of stuff enables economic growth in a general sense. So it's kind of cool. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think STC is seen as like the key success story of privatization in the kingdom as well. So I think there are other companies that will kind of rise up to that status. But at the moment, it's great to see it expanding and great to see kind of, that it's continuing to attract investments, growth, and diversification. And it really is becoming a very influential player in telecoms across the world even. So apparently, they've also acquired infrastructure in Bulgaria and Croatia and Slovenia and so on. So I think it's expanding beyond Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, Hanaa, it started raining, so I think that might mean the end of this No, it didn't actually start raining. I'm just kidding. But that does wrap up our podcast here from London. Yeah. No longer sunny London, but thank you for hosting me. And we will be doing more of these live shows together. And we will also be doing sort of interviews and stuff that are not necessarily only on the digital format. This show will take many different forms, and eventually as we expand, this is great, but this is super fun to do with you in person. So Thank you very much for hosting.
Thank you.